work on a project, and the insane ability to follow your dream. And her first book, which I love, Sing in the Morning, Cry at Night, hit so many heights in its release that she's now on her third. Anyway, for your entertainment and enjoyment, Barbara J. Taylor.
Thank you. Hi everybody, thanks for coming out tonight. Following my dream, I just retired from teaching on June 27th. So, 31 and a half years. I loved it. Writing is my dream.
But you'll be a teacher forever, I'm sure.
I'm sure. As Donna mentioned, my first novel, Sing in the Morning, Cry at Night, and that's what I'm going to be reading from tonight. I'm working on the third book. It's turned into a trilogy, but the books are standalone and self-contained. It's just that each one is about 20 years apart. So I wrote Sing in the Morning, Cry at Night, and it takes place in 1913. And then All Waiting is Long starts in 1930. And book 3, because I don't have a title yet, is taking place in 1955. But Sing in the Morning, Cry at Night, it's basically about a little girl who's blamed for the death of her sister. And it takes place in my hometown, Scranton, Pennsylvania, in 1913, so that was the time of coal mining, vaudeville, evangelism, and that's really all you need to know. Tonight I'm going to be reading just the opening to the book. What I like to do in these books is every 6 or 7 chapters, I start with a piece of advice and a chorus of church women who speak in one voice to give you a sense of the town and the time period. So tonight I'm going to read the first chorus and chapter 1. They're both pretty brief. So Sing in the Morning, Cry at Night. To revive withered flowers. Fill a bowl with water so hot that you can scarcely bear your hand in it. Throw a little salt in the water and put the flowers in immediately. The effect is wonderful. Mrs. Joe's Housekeeping Guide, 1909. Widows and spinsters were the backbone of the church. Visit the shut-ins, polish the collection plates, wash and iron the baptismal robes, wrap them in blue paper to keep them from yellowing. Every Saturday morning we clean the sanctuary. Takes a good deal of water and elbow grease. Start in the front, work our way back. No reason, just habit. Mix a spoonful of kerosene into the bucket, adds a shine to your woodwork. Glass too if you dry it with newspapers. Cleaning's more difficult after a funeral. The family takes the flowers graveside, but you can still smell them. Stronger when it's a child. Don't know why, but we've all said it. We'll say it again soon enough. That's how life is. Buried the Morgan girl this past summer. Tragic. Only 9 years old. The candle of Grace's eye, as we Welsh say. And Owen's, most likely, since Daisy was the first of their 2 children. Reverend Halloway preached himself proud. Not easy under such circumstances. Seen better than him fall to pieces while performing a service for a youngster. Owen, too. A rock if we ever saw one. Patience of a saint. Holding his wife on the right and that other daughter of his on the left. Job himself could not have done better. Of course, strength like that can't last forever. Now, Grace, she's another story. Just have to look at her to know. She'll take the easy way out. Go batty like her mother. Not that we can blame her. Who's to say we'd manage any better? Hope we would, though. And then there's Violet. Lost her only sister. Accident or not. Can't hold a body accountable at 8 years old. Probably didn't do it out of meanness.
Hello, and thank you. I don't have to say much about this at all. It's the first chapter, and I hope it kind of speaks for itself. The only thing I can say about it is, as wild as it seems, it actually happened. This is taken from New York history. The Williamsburg Bridge was already jammed with photographers, spectators, and newsreel cameras when Laura Bailey and Cheesy Clark arrived at the scene. They had a tough time shoving their way to a good vantage, see all the way upriver towards the Queensboro Bridge. So, said Cheesy, removing the bulky flash attachment from his speed graphic as he set himself up for shooting. Here we is, me and you, a gal reporter and a cheesecake artist. What do you think the deal is? This whole thing doesn't make any sense, Laura frowned as she wiggled into a space between it as steel post and Cheesy. A puff of breeze warned that she needed to hold this tightly to her little hat with one hand as she was gripping the railing with the other. I bet that span isn't 200 feet off the water, she yelled over the noise of the crowd. No one can fly under that. And look, she said, pointing west toward the Manhattan side of the bridge, clogged with the Sunday traffic that was moving to and from Queens over the East River. There are cables and stuff hanging down that could catch and rip a wing in a second. Cheesy did no more than grunt. He was too busy jamming plates in and out of his camera, turning one way for shots of the swelling crowd, whirling back, shooting the bridge up ahead, the barges, the Sunday sailors, and other river traffic. Heck of a spread for the paper tomorrow, he finally said. If the fool pilot gets himself killed or not, still heck of a spread. Ouch, get your clodhopper off my foot, Laura yelled as a passing newsreel cameraman backed into her, angling for his own perspective. Laura was at a distinct disadvantage, jockeying among all these men, dressed as she was in a mid-calf length skirt that hobbled her movement, the tiny hat with a veil perched atop her dark marcelled wave. Sorry, lady, the cameraman said, but what are you doing here anyway? You're in the way. So are you, Buster, Laura snapped, giving him a shove and turning her attention back to the bridge ahead, scanning the horizon on the outlandish possibility that there could actually be a little bi-wing airplane approaching. The rumor was, hard to comprehend as it seemed, that some crazy barnstorming pilot from Roosevelt Field was planning to fly under all four bridges that crossed from Manhattan to Brooklyn and Queens. People were doing all sorts of screwy things in 1929, as a glimpse at any newspaper would reveal. They called their era the Jazz Age, the Roaring Twenties. The Great War had been over for 10 years. It was a time of boundless hope, optimism, and prosperity. Blue skies are smiling at me was the song on everyone's lips. The tabloids were full of flagpole sitters, flappers doing the Charleston, and marathon dancers, leaning on their partners through endless nights. The more serious journals had many readers believing that Herbert Hoover would put a chicken in every pot, a car in every garage, and that the bull market would last forever. But everyone agreed that these stunt pilots took the cake. Ever since Charles Lindbergh had flown the Atlantic solo 2 years before, the entire world had gone nuts over flying. Even women were doing it. Let's hope he flies north to south, Laura said to a reporter jammed next to her with an evening graphic press card stuck in his hat. If he starts downriver from the Brooklyn Bridge, we won't be able to see him coming, only going. So the reporter laughed. If he crashes into the Queensboro before he gets under it, we won't be able to see that either. We should have had another shooter here, Cheesy grumbled. I can catch action north, but with the bend in the river, I'm out of luck if he crashes into the Manhattan or the Brooklyn Bridge. At that moment, a collective ah rose from the gathering crowd. Laura could make out a dark speck moving through the sky toward the Queensboro. The black spot was coming closer. It wobbled, caught a sun ray that flashed on the water, and headed straight for the dangling cables. Laura's chest got tight. She realized she was holding her breath. The poor guy was going to be killed. She'd never seen anyone die before, but she gritted her teeth. I suppose it's part of the job. I can't be weak-kneed. I have to prove myself. She watched the speck swerve, then merge with the shadowed waters beneath the bridge. Her held breath turned to a gasp. The little spot popped up into the sun. A roar went up from the bridge watchers. The expanding dot was clearly identifiable as a plane now, fast approaching, threading its way among the ships and barges in the harbor. It neared the Williamsburg, and the open cockpit biplane rocked from side to side in greeting to the cheering, waving crowd. Laura could have sworn she caught a momentary glimpse of a grin under the cloth helmet and goggles of the figure in the cockpit. Bridge traffic was at a standstill. The plane was heading straight for them, its nose pointing down. Laura elbowed and clawed her way back through the crowd and zigzagged through the stalled cars for a view from the other side. As she shoved one last person out of her way, she grabbed up a handful of hobbled skirt, yanked it above her knees, kicked off her high heels, and hoisted her tiny frame up several rungs on the bridge's railing. Geez, I hope Cheese has the good sense to be right behind me. Sure enough, there he was, hanging over the bridge railing. "You're pretty fast on your feet for a broad," he said with a grin. "Darn right," Laura yelled into the wind. "I was saving you a spot." Mild though the weather was, there was more than a little breeze when you stuck your head this far out. She was already half over the rail, leaning on her abdomen to help balance while she stretched out for a better view of the water. "Holy cow," Cheesy almost whispered. "Here he comes." Laura could hardly hear him over the sound of his camera slide click as she caught sight of the first dark shadow of wings spread on the water. At that same moment, she felt the wind tug at her hair. Uh-oh. She didn't dare grab at her hat. She needed both hands on the rail or she'd be in the drink as well. With something akin to seasickness, she watched the little veiled felt that represented a week's salary sail off as it caught the wind current. Borne by the fickle wind, it floated, then dipped, then glided as it leisurely made its way to the river far below. She didn't have time to mourn. Here came the plane. It did the very same kind of pop-up Laura had seen when it came out from under the Queensboro moments before. Wow, she'd never had a story like this. It was a real humdinger. She shifted her belly slightly on the railing and looked down straight into the hole of metal that passed for a cockpit. A flutter of white. A silk scarf flashed, blowing in the wind. "Good grief," Laura screamed at Cheesy. "That was a woman!" She knew it. She didn't know why, but she just knew it. A woman! The tiny biplane and its shadow were already skimming through the sky and gliding along the choppy surface of the water. The crowd behind Laura was laughing and cheering. Some people were actually dancing around the stalled cars or doing jigs on the roadway of the bridge. "A woman!" Laura screamed again at Cheesy. "I've got to get to a phone." As she dropped off the railing and scrambled into her shoes, she caught a view through the bridge's lacy grillwork. The tiny dot of a plane, on its way to the next bridge, was swinging slightly to its left, trying to avoid the smokestack of a river barge. "I've got to file this story. I can't stay to see what happens," Laura thought. Cheesy will get a picture. That actually happened 90 years ago next week. Wow. A 17-year-old woman from Long Island took off from Roosevelt Field and flew under all 4 East River bridges. Thanks.
Actually, really terrified all the readers into sticking to their time. So we do have a little extra, and Andy Grell has offered to read something to help entertain you for another 10 minutes or so. Andy Grell.
I have 10 minutes, I have 10 minutes.
You have 2 minutes, get to it.
Flash.
Hi. I'm Andy Grell. I'm an emerging writer. And as such, a target for everybody's calls for submission, and I took the temptation of flash fiction a couple of weeks ago, and my friend Donna has kindly consented to let me try it out on a live audience.
Only because you're donating the proceeds of the books to animal rescue.
Okay, either way. So this is the story, Celsius 233. It's like the movie from the Bradbury book, only it's different. We're not fascist art criminals. It's different, but the same too, and it needs a different name. A name that means the same thing. Matt's friends weren't getting the idea. Another keg of beer might turn the tide. The graying man, older yet more physically fit, with 60 years of cycling than most of his younger friends, carried in 2 large kegs, one on each shoulder, then went back for a couple of trays of wings, skins, and pigs and blankets. The vibe in the room became more amenable. Why don't you just ask me some questions? I'll answer them. Then we'll all be on the same page. Audrey rose from the low seat, possibly more to get away from the too close guy than to ask a question. So, Matt, we're not actually burning books? No, fascists burn books. We are writing messages in fire. Audrey was gorgeous for her age. If Matt wasn't still carrying a torch for his late wife, and if he can commit to anything past second base, he'd have asked her out. But he needed her to help spread the movement. Are we burning wooden torches? They'll look like wooden torches at ground level, but we're burning magnesium ribbon. 3,000 of them in close proximity will be seen from space. And we have, let's say, an accommodation with someone involved with the International Space Station's external cameras. Trust Fund Trudy got up off the white Flacati rug and calmed her dog. Who's the guy in the burqa? Trudy was a major contributor. She merited a little leeway. Not at liberty to say, but he's the one who's risking the most just being here. If there are no other questions, I'm going to run through the assignments. Audrey is chief of operations. Any problems get run by her. Everyone has to do what she says. Judy runs the emergency legal team. Fred will make sure that the Celsius 233 tchotchkes get into the right place at the right time. Bill is the drum major. He'll make sure everyone is standing in the right spot in the formation. The other specialists are classified, as if I could classify anything. Everyone, including the specialist, must recruit 10 torchbearers and motivate each of the 10 they recruited to get 10 more. Now scat, all of you, but slowly, 2 at a time. Trial 1 at the Bonneville Salt Flats went perfectly. Photographers memorialized the cheerful demonstrators biking in and setting up. Reuters received the satellite shots for Berkerman and released them in bright flame. Hashtag resist. Next was hashtag us too from Idaho's Oleye Desert. At least people will learn that Idaho has a desert. After the third, a peace sign from Central Park, the Celsius 233 movement exploded past the original group. The messages had the intended effect, getting people to think about what was going on. That's them. Especially Matt's last message from the Sahara. Hashtag Audrey, will you marry me? Thank you very much. Thank you guys so much for coming out.
So that concludes our readings for tonight. The opening readings of the 20th season of Trumpet Fiction. Yay! Hosted by Trumpet Fiction and San Fidele Press. We have books here, we have cookies there. John the bartender is still on duty, so stick around. Thank you very much. Oh, 1 month, there's a flyer on your table because in 1 month we will be doing a sci-fi and fantasy reading for Trumpet Fiction and San Fidele Press. Be there or be square.